All right, welcome back. Tinker versus Des Moines. All right, the context for this case is that we are considering again how the Bill of Rights is being continually reinterpreted to balance power of government and civil liberties of individuals. All right, the facts of this case: students were suspended for wearing black armbands as a symbol to protest the Vietnam War. So just a little bit more detail on that. These students planned this protest. They were going to wear the black armbands on a specific date. The school found out about it ahead of time, and they essentially made a rule saying that students couldn't do that, and if students did come and wore their black armbands, that they would get suspended. The students decided to do it anyway, and they were in fact suspended. So the issue of this case: does a public school ban on students wearing black armbands as symbolic protest violate students' First Amendment free speech rights? So do you have a First Amendment free speech right to protest by wearing something like a black armband at school? The holding by the Supreme Court is that the armbands represent pure speech and students have free speech rights at school, whether you believe that or not. But that is what the Supreme Court says. You do have free speech rights at school. To justify suppressing, limiting, banning speech, the school must prove that it would substantially interfere with the operation of the school. So you see two parts of this decision. Is that for the first part is that students do in fact have free speech rights at school. However, there is justification for it being limited or suppressed while you're at public school, and that is that it would substantially interfere with the operation of the school. So if the school does have a right to keep order and maintain discipline and promote education, and so if that speech would interfere substantially with that, then the school is allowed to limit it. But in this case, black armbands did not substantially interfere, so those students had the right to wear those armbands and not be suspended. Constitutional principle to support this decision was that the student's right of political symbolic speech, this is an example of symbolic speech, based on the First Amendment, overrode the school administrator's concern for potential disorder. So again, you have two rights that are real, where the state, in this case embodied by the public school, they do have a legitimate interest in maintaining order at school, but students have a right of speech, and so that free speech right is more important, so it overrides the concern for potential disorder that these armbands could have allegedly created. All right, key quotes from the majority opinion. It says that First Amendment rights are available to both teachers and students, and then this sentence is probably the most famous from Tinker versus Des Moines. It says, "It can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate." In other words, you have free speech when you're outside of public school, and when you come to school in the morning, it says basically it can hardly be argued that you shed those rights to free speech or expression when you come to school. All right, another quote from the majority opinion. It's saying that the prohibition of expression of one particular opinion, in this case anti-Vietnam War, at least without evidence that it is necessary to avoid material and substantial interference with schoolwork or discipline, is not constitutionally permissible. So again, you see that they are leaving the door open, that if the school had evidence that prohibiting this speech was necessary because otherwise it would cause material and substantial interference with school or discipline, so they could limit it in those cases, but unless they can justify it on that grounds, then they cannot limit freedom of speech or expression. All right, and then again, still in the majority opinion, it goes on to say that state-operated schools, which remember public schools are in fact state-operated schools, may not be enclaves of totalitarianism. School officials do not possess absolute authority over their students. And again, showing that in the absence of specific showing of constitutionally valid reasons to regulate speech, students are entitled to freedom of expression of their views. So again, there is that door open for a limitation if it's constitutionally valid to do so, but schools do not have absolute authority over students. Students have free speech. From the dissenting opinion, we have a quote here. The crucial remaining questions are whether students and teachers may use the school at their whim as a platform for the exercise of free speech. And it says, if time has come when pupils of public schools can defy and flout orders of school officials to keep their minds on their own schoolwork, it is the beginning of a new revolutionary era of permissiveness in this country, fostered by the judiciary. So you see again that critique there at the end of this being an overreach of judicial power. It's alleging that this is judicial activism run amok and that this is being too permissive. This is obviously saying that the schools have a right to tell students what to do, to keep their mind on their schoolwork, and they can limit the free speech if they so desire. But remember that this is the dissent, not the majority opinion. All right, don't forget, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button for me. Until next time, this has been a La Money production.